Here's our agenda. We're going to do a little bit of an intro into content strategy. What is it? Why does it matter? And then we'll talk historically about how search has changed. I'm not a history buff here, but it does matter. It matters for you. And then we'll pivot into why creating good content is important and how we can think about creating good content in light of how search has shifted over time. We'll tie this down into the actual content strategy tool. So how can we execute upon this in HubSpot? And then we'll close out by just understanding how we can be analyzing whether or not we're doing well with SEO specific to our content. Lastly, we'll have a full-fledged Q&A. So one thing that Mike already did a great job, he chatted in, will the slides and video be available? You do not need to do screen grabs. We will definitely send out the deck, which does have a few hyperlinks, and we can send out the recording as well for any colleagues that maybe couldn't make it. To Mike's point, Alex, do you want to share a little bit about how you're going to be moderating the chat?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to keep an eye on it, and if there's questions that come in, I'm probably just going to interrupt Kelsey here at a time that makes sense and get those out so she can answer them in the moment.
Definitely. So as you have questions, chat them in. If I know Alex and I are pretty comfortable with the material we're covering, if we know we're going to get to it, we might put it on hold, or we can dedicate it if it's a little bit more specific. We can do a Q&A at the end. I'm going to try to leave at least 15 minutes for you to have some open-ended questions, but I would say chat them in as you think of them so that we don't lose them. All right, if that sounds good and fair, then let's jump in. So when we're thinking about SEO, the thing that we must be thinking about is creating the right pieces of content to be found by your target users. So you might be thinking like, okay, Kelsey, Alex, like that seems good and fair, but what does that actually mean? Let's break it down. It's creating the right pieces of content. That has everything to do with the strategy. It's going to be found by, through SEO, your target users. Those are your actual personas. So another way to think about this is we're producing the right content for the right people. So as with everything in HubSpot, the right people are personas. And if you don't have them yet, you should definitely create them. First CTA, call to action of this session, create a persona. Maybe create multiple. One good way to think about this is we have a newly revamped Make My Persona website. It asks you relevant questions for you and your team to start building out your actual personas. To entice you a little further, this is the URL. Curious now, do you have a persona? Anybody feel comfortable chatting in? Yes, we have them. We have multiple. We've never done them. Maybe if you have Sally, the CEO, would love to hear about her. All right, so it sounds like some folks already don't have personas.
Just getting going, having a couple. Marketing Mary.
Yeah, have some, but they need to be better defined. I would definitely recommend using Make My Persona. Oh, and have them but aren't using them. That's interesting. Yep.
Totally.
It's often, so Mike Brown brought up something interesting. He said, we've had them shift younger as the business goes on and our audience changes. That's really insightful because you do want to revisit your personas every so often. I don't want to give away the secret sauce, but I will tell you that HubSpot's personas have actually shifted over the last 5 years or so as a response to the market. And so I do think it's important to continue to revisit those folks.
Yeah, there's a couple on here who said we've created them, but we aren't using them. I think that's important to mention as well.
Definitely.
So you're not the only ones. There's definitely been a few who said that. The names are fantastic coming in. Champion Chuck.
Old school Oscar.
Old school Oscar.
Yeah, I would have to integrate them into HubSpot. Yep, definitely. Yep. So I'm curious, Tim, or some of you folks, maybe if they're not integrated in HubSpot, are you still using them to create your content? And while you guys are chatting in, I can tell a kind of goofy anecdote. Cool, awesome, Tim. So this is actually a true story. I was at this shopping center the other day, and there are dozens of stores there, and candidly, I shop at most of them. And I'm there and I'm listening, and the music's incredible. There's a little bit of the guilty pleasure game. Madonna, Rascal Flatts, and I'm looking around. My favorite snacks are there. There's frozen yogurt, there's soft pretzels, and even as a marketer myself, I had this moment where I realized this is not happenstance. These things are geared toward me. This is structured to focus on my persona. So even though I thought I was pretty special and it just so happened that all my favorite things were in the same space, that wasn't the case. Personas are extremely, extremely important. Anything else on the chat front that's come in, Alex?
It's just kind of the same thing. Have them all the time.
Awesome.
First time home buyer, all pretty specific stuff. So
Okay, so somebody asked a Q&A. Curious to hear your thoughts on having a persona that's a department instead of an individual. That's interesting. Would love a little bit more context. I will get back to that question. If you want to just chat in a little bit more around who you are and what you do, then I can better give an answer to that. Generally, personas are semi-fictional people, but I could see why you would make a case potentially for a department. Okay, so let's keep cruising here. Google's algorithm continues to evolve to serve consumers better. So the reason that personas matter is your search needs to be about your end user. SEO used to be search engine optimization. There's this woman, Upasana Gautam, she's an SEO expert, and she actually coined the term search experience optimization because it really should be about the end user and no longer about the engine or the people creating the content. So as your personas change, you have to keep in mind that Google is also changing their algorithm to try to make some changes.
Maybe an audio issue?
Okay, great.
Cool.
So shifting along here, think about this. Let's take a little time travel. If I'm hungry and I'm about to go on my lunch break, I'm probably searching, where should I eat? What would I have done 10 years ago? I probably would have searched closer to lunch that's open, that's in Boston. So it's really important that we understand that people are asking questions to Google as if they were talking in real life. So that's semantic search. And that's basically a fancy way of saying it's a data searching technique in which a search query aims to not just find keywords, but to understand intent and contextual meaning. So we should be thinking about semantic search because Google is more knowledgeable than ever, and the end consumer is expecting that as well. All right, so when we actually do the search, what are we finding? We're seeing featured snippets, we're seeing image or video or products for purchase, we're seeing definitions, a local 3-pack, and related suggestions. So here's an example of a featured snippet. I was on a kick the other day. I went to my uncle's house and he has a paddleboard, and I tried it so hard and I fell no fewer than 3 times. But so now I'm thinking I need to get a paddleboard and get better at it. Alex, have you ever been paddleboarding?
I sure have. I actually own a paddleboard. You can borrow it sometime.
Maybe I should start there. But so I go on this hunt for paddleboard, and I also was thinking about this deck, and I thought this would be pretty helpful. So immediately I had a snippet. No surprise, it's Wikipedia. They have a very high domain authority. But that's that call-out section. That is the creme de la creme if you want to be ranking in search. But I also see some images, some videos, some popular products I might be interested in. These videos are inspiring me. I'm going to be toned immediately once I start paddleboarding. And then the local 3-pack, which this is actually a link, the local 3-pack, that's why it's underlined. It's sort of a shameless plug for a local SEO blog post that I wrote. And I'm curious, how many of you on the line are like brick and mortar or care about SEO geographically? So that would mean you have a storefront, maybe you're a restaurant. Okay, so it sounds like some folks already are saying that they, okay, so yep, for sure.
Nope. Yes, no.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. No, yes, no. It's about 50% so far.
Yeah, looks like a mixed bag there. So if local SEO is important to you, one, I would click on this link later on. It's a huge comprehensive guide to local SEO. But also the local 3-pack is very important. So that's your Google My Business, which oftentimes comes at the right hand of a Google search. They usually pull in 3. Awesome. So chugging along here. There's also the related suggestions. Pay huge attention to this. Why does this matter? This is basically where Google is letting you know what consumers also care about. So when I search for paddleboards, Google's also saying, hey, people are asking about whether or not it's good exercise, whether or not there are specific benefits. So this is also a great way to understand potential opportunities for targeting. So all this is to say, where's the opportunity and why should we be focusing on this? It's a little scary, but it's also super exciting. We're taking in these algorithm changes to ensuring that we're maximizing our chances within search. So remember, we are supporting content that will rank. That means we're providing content that's focused on our target personas, things that they want to explore. And one thing to really keep in mind here is remember that Google thinks of their searchers as their customers. So they're worried about the end user of the search as their customer. They're not focused on you, they're not focused on anybody else. And that's a way to be making sure that you're serving up mindful, helpful, relevant content that will make the end user's experience positive. And then Google has that relationship of, hey, we sent this person to this page and they spent this much time there. That's a good indicator. So one way to ensure that we're going to win the ranking war, which is a little dramatic, but we got to make sure our content is easily found and that it's relevant for the right audiences who want to be seen as an authority. Okay, sure, Kelsey, that sounds great. But what is great content? It always relies on context. So the reason why a page is ranking high is very likely because the creator of the page took into account the user's intent or their challenge while creating that page. And so I have 3 hot tips here. So every single page we create should do one of the following. It should, 1, help with leads, 2, help with backlinks, or 3, help to close a customer. Something I just mentioned in there is backlinks. I'm curious, there's a couple ways to think about linking. So an inbound link, for example, is a link from another person's website, another domain, to yours. And that gives credence because it's kind of like if you were interviewing for a job and your manager was able to put in a good word. It's somebody else's tie to you as opposed to you just saying, hey, I'm sure I'm an authority on this. So I'm curious, do you folks focus on inbound linking at all? Is linking an overall part of your strategy? And I would actually love to hear if anybody is feeling brave and willing to share what are some tactics that work for you for link building. How's it looking, Alex?
It's looking good. Gaping hole in our strategy. Yes, it's very important. A bit more focused on linking internally. A lot of wish we could do more.
Sure. I think Susanna's comment there about a bit more focus on internal linking, topic clusters tie in really well there. And internal linking is smart to focus on because you have 100% control. Inbound links are a little bit trickier because you need to be navigating somebody else's website and their willingness, but they're both important, definitely.
Here's an interesting one. Seems spammy and hard to do.
So that's a great point. It is challenging to do. It's not spammy when it's done right. So gone are the days of what we call link farms, where basically you would pay to have a link from a reasonably high domain authority website come to yours. I mean, they're not probably totally eradicated, but if I'm being honest, they're not super valuable because there's no context and there's no intent on those links. But done well, like let's say a guest blog post opportunity, right? So I'm a paddleboard company and I reach out to an organization that does swimsuits and I connect with them and I write a blog post on what you should be thinking about when you paddleboard. That's a contextual link and that is extremely valuable. Okay, so Karen asks, does internal linking make a big impact? Yes. It is not quite as impactful as inbound links, so external links from other websites, but it is extremely, extremely important for sure. And it's great because you can really choose your own adventure on that. I love that Megan said, we work with partners to make sure we have their links and that they keep yours active. That's great. I mean, one way to get a very straightforward inbound link is to actually just have potentially your logo on somebody else's website if you have a partnership and have that linked to you. That's like a kind of an easier win or a guest blog post. Awesome. Okay, so Judy said articles in industry pubs. Cool.
Yeah.
I wonder what industry you're in.
That's a good question. Is there a rule of thumb for how many external links you can include in a piece of content?
So if you're referring to links from your website to others, then not necessarily. There's not like a hard and fast rule of you can't link out more than 5 times. I will say the more links that you have, the more you sort of devalue the equity of the link. So thinking about it, like we're not giving them out like candy, right? We're thinking about like what's contextual, what makes sense. In terms of external links to your content, so other websites linking to you, holy smokes, the sky is the limit. The more links that you can get, assuming that they're relevant and contextual, the better. It shouldn't affect page load time if there are a lot of links, Megan. There's a lot of other factors like image resolution and domain that have much bigger impact on page load time, I would say I wouldn't think about that as a factor. You could always run your website through like a page load time and see, Google might beg to differ, but generally I would say that's not something to factor in. Cool. So, oh, look at that. So we've got great content. The content should solve a problem, be a leading authority on a topic, and or complete a popular customer need. So let's take a pause here for a second. I don't think that we should be always reinventing the wheel. I imagine a lot of the folks on this call are marketers, so you don't have to tell me that you are super busy. So what we don't want to do is just throw to the wall and see what sticks, right? We want to be working backward from what's effective. So if video content is ranking for the topics that you're talking about, then use video content. Google is literally telling you what people want to see. So use this information, don't reinvent the wheel. We're caring about context, we're caring about personalization, and we're caring about preferences. And so a note here is, remember the screenshots from earlier? So those are from the search engine result pages, right? And those are a way for us to know that when I search for a certain term, these are the things that come up generally. So for example, if I search something associated with paddleboards, a specific keyword, and all I get are blog posts, it's very unlikely that a product page is going to rank for that keyword because Google's already telling us that this is what people prefer to see in their blogs, maybe long form blogs. So use Google to suggest to you what type of content, what media you want to be producing. And a caveat here is I would make sure to use incognito search. Google's really smart and it understands how you search. And so it's going to start to guide its content toward that. So I would use an incognito search, tabula rasa, fresh slate, and that would allow you to have a better understanding of what's actually potentially ranking. Just a general word of thumb, or whenever someone is searching, they're always looking for a solution, a product, or a service. So keep that in mind. Always looking for a solution, product, or service. And you might be thinking, well, maybe not necessarily. They are. They might not know that they are. They might be at the highest awareness. They're barely realizing that there's a problem, but they are searching for something in that capacity. Okay, so this is where we pivot. We've talked a lot about search and how search has changed and how the ways in which people can show up, whether or not it's a featured snippet or a local 3-pack. How can we be making sure our content is working well for us? We're going to put the content into topic clusters. So a little Q&A now. What's your familiarity? Let's say scale 1 to 10. 10 means you live, breathe, eat, sleep topic clusters. If that's true, you should probably submit an application to work here. 1 maybe is that you've never heard of them, never created one, don't really know much about it. Would love to hear from you.
Seven, 8, 1.
Okay.
5, 8, 7. Heard of them.
I'll take it.
All over the place. So we've seen as low as 1 all the way up to about 7 or 8, and then people who've never heard of it or touched it.
Seems valuable and useful, but it's unclear how they impact things. All right, so let's take a look here at how we can do a little bit better. On the left, you see what HubSpot used to do. So we basically said, hey, we think we're an expert in marketing and agencies and sales, and here's all of our content. Okay, that's cool. But on the right, you see topic clusters. You see, let's just say orange is marketing, the pink is agency, and the teal is sales. Now we're aggregating our content together, we're bundling it and saying, hey, we're not just purporting to be an expert in marketing, but these are the pieces of content that support this marketing idea. All right, so shifting in a little bit here, let's take a deeper dive. Things to know before you start creating a topic cluster. So as with everything in HubSpot, the most important person to keep top of mind is your persona. Who are you writing for? Where are they in their journey? And what is their situation so that you can provide the context that's helpful? I hope you already knew the answer to that one. The next piece here is search analysis. So what are the topics you're getting traffic from? What longer tail keywords are working for you? And ultimately, what are the types of topics that you're creating content from? So you might notice that that's underlined. That's actually because that's a link. So if you click on search analysis, when I send out the deck later, it's going to take you to a website called Answer the Public. And basically what that allows you to do is it creates variations on keywords. So if you put in paddle boards or exercising with paddle boards, it's going to give some blog post ideas, and it's going to suggest, these are some variations that you might want to consider. Another way to do that, you might recall, is when we did the search earlier, one of the results was related suggestions. That's another way that Google is just point blank telling you, hey, people also care about these other things. And then I would honestly potentially argue that content audit is actually the most important piece of getting started. And why that matters is you need to figure out, what content do I already have? And can I repurpose some of it, right? We're busy, we have a lot in our day-to-day. We don't necessarily need to be reinventing the wheel. And then also, what are the metrics associated with our content? How is it performing? So does one of your posts maybe have a lot of backlinks and therefore is seen as an authority on a particular subject? If that's the case, let's amplify other posts and give them an SEO boost by associating them with this high-performing post. So I'm curious, when's the last time you did a content audit? Maybe you've never done one, and that's okay, but would love to hear a little bit about that. Awesome. Love seeing those answers come in.
Yeah. Here's one from Megan. Can you define what a content audit is?
Yeah, definitely. So essentially, content audit is basically just taking a look at any content that you already have live on your website or already have prepared, and just seeing what gaps you potentially might have. So what blog posts do we have? How do they relate to the other blog posts? And then also, how are they relating to our overall goals and ambitions for SEO? Al Davidson said, started the job in October and did a half audit. Does that count? Yeah, I think that counts.
In the midst of one right now, need to do one. Starting the process every 3 months, last week. So really all over the place.
Yeah, quarterly.
Quarterly.
Awesome. So once you've done your content audit, then you're going to start thinking about where you can create new content, right? That's kind of the next piece of that there. So what's the tie down here? Okay, sure, we talked about a lot of concepts. How can we actually organize this, and how can we make sure that this is effective and working for us? And the answer is through the content strategy tool. So reasons why the strategy tool is valuable. It provides search metrics, particularly if you integrate with Google Search Console, which is a really valuable option. Right when you go into your topic clusters, for those who maybe aren't as familiar, there's the option to actually integrate right with your own Google Search Console. I definitely recommend doing that. You're going to get real-time search metrics. It's going to give suggested content topics. So it says, hey, listen, we'll actually audit your website. And we crawled this, and this is what we think you are an authority, and this is what it seems like you have content around. It allows you to understand what's currently working. They allow you to, the topic clusters allow you to develop a strategy. If you can think of it as like a thought map, it's kind of a spider web. And so you can realize where you potentially have gaps or opportunities. And it's also a good indicator of your internal linking. So when we build out a topic cluster, we'll get to this shortly, but your subtopics are all going to link to your core pillar content. And so this allows you to realize, hey, we thought that this subtopic rolled into this pillar content, but we're realizing we don't have a link there. How could Google know that, right? Like, how would Google know that they're related if there's not a direct link? Let's make it a little bit easier for them. So any questions coming in?
Yeah, it looks like there's one from Bradley. Is the content strategy tool the same as the SEO tool in HubSpot?
It is. Yeah, they are one and the same. So if you go into your marketing dropdown, I think there's planning and strategy, the SEO, or the content strategy tool. Oh, and I just anticipated Eric's question. Awesome. So one thing to be thinking about is that it's really important that your inbound strategy is working for you. What we don't want to do is have it feel like, okay, well, this is another thing to add to our list. I wouldn't think about it like that. I would be thinking about it in terms of, this is a way to up-level or lean into the work that we're already doing. We already work hard. We produce great content. How can we aggregate it to get together to perform better results? Just as what you might sell to your customers is very likely personalized, so too should be every decision that you make in terms of this inbound strategy. And the topic clusters really help in that regard. And the last piece here is, of course, it bundles your content together. lets you know where you have related content and where you potentially have some gaps. So, okay, that's all well and good. What are the steps to actually get started? We talked about a content audit. That's the first piece there. We're going to want to plan, validate, execute, analyze. I will tell you, for a while, I was trying to think of a fun acronym. I got nothing out of this. PVEA doesn't really do it for me, but bonus points if anybody can think of maybe a synonym and we can sub out one of these words. But that's neither here nor there. Pave. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's a good one. All right, hold on. Yeah. Well, I guess it doesn't have to be sequential. I think I'm going to go with pave. That works for now. Thank you.
Pave the way.
Yeah, I like that. So the planning piece, this is a big one. So I would be thinking about what topics do we want to be known for? So there's 5 to 7 key things that you are probably known for by your customer. And I'm a New Englander, born and raised, so I'm going to shoot you straight on this one. This is not the dream of what you want to be known for. This is the reality. Who are you? What do you do? How do you help? Those are the things that we're thinking about. And then we recommend starting outside of the tool, right? You're doing some research and you figured out these like 5 to 7 things that your customers know you for. Things to keep in mind: what types of words are they using versus the words that you're using about your language, about your business? And how can you find this out? Does anybody have any ideas of how you could figure out with your customers, maybe how they speak about you? You just call them one by one and ask. It's one option.
Queries in the Search Console.
Yes.
Social listening.
Yep. Social listening.
Social media.
Sales staff for sure. Reviewing sites.
Yep. Reviews.
Yep. Surveys of topics they want to hear about. Yep. Older posts that get organic traffic. Mike, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Google reviews. Shonda, I love that. While we're there, Shonda, I'm wondering if you have a Google My Business. If you're looking at Google reviews, I would think so. One thing to note, a little local SEO tip for a brick and mortar. I would say it's always good to respond to the Google reviews and use certain keywords. So if somebody says, had a great experience at X, thank you so much. Or even if they say that they don't, you write back, so glad you could visit our New York shop. We are happy to sell you X, because what you're doing is you're continuing to further reiterate the keywords that you want to be ranking for. So that's just an aside tip, which you would have found if you take a look at the local SEO guide that I linked to in the previous slide. Benchmark competitors, that's a big one, Tim, for sure. Another thing, I don't know if I didn't see this come in, but list your support team as well. If you have a support team or like customer service. And then predictive text in Google. So that's a hint I gave with this screenshot. Looking at what else Google is thinking about. So the first piece is starting outside the tool. Like, what do we want to be known for? And how do people know us currently? Then there's also overarching topics. And there's different elements to this. The goal is to rank for as many different parts of the topic as possible in order to rank well. So you're really focusing on some overarching topics. The question here I often get is, okay, Kelsey, that's fine, but how broad? And I would say, to be cautious, you need something that you're already an authority on. So if you're a brand new website, it will be extremely difficult to potentially target something that's really very broad and that has really high difficulty and high search volume. So you might need to make it slightly more niche and then move out from there. I would say you can use, if you Google, I should link to this, but what is my website's domain authority? There's a couple places that you can actually check. And so that's on a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being just absolutely the best. I will say even incredible websites that you're probably on very often are like in the low 90s. So it's very difficult to rank well. But it's something to know, like if you have a higher domain authority, get a little crazy, go for something. But if you're a newer website, if your domain authority is on the lower side, I'd be a bit more cautious here. So once we know what we want to focus on, we're going to map out and align the topics that are relevant to your business. And the key here is really, it shouldn't be so broad that they potentially are misaligned. So we really do want to focus on like, what are the key areas relevant to our business? Jeff's curious here. I know there's a lot of us who probably won't get to all of them, but what's a topic that you maybe would like to go after? So in your own business, like what's a topic cluster you already have or a topic cluster you want to focus on? Would love to hear from you. Alex, feel free to share any that come in.
Yep, they're coming in. Managed service looks like curriculum development, data management platforms.
Ooh, that's a great one.
Shipping software, cybersecurity.
Okay, so a lot of these, like marketing automation solutions, cybersecurity, data management, I am not an expert in all of the search volume, but I would imagine that those career training are pretty competitive. So I love the ambition there, and I would think about if there's a way to dial it in a little bit more, or if you have decent domain authority, go for it. Awesome. Okay, so one question that came in, Alex.
A little while back.
Yeah, a little while back.
Simon, I think.
Yeah, what was it?
For sites that are primarily e-commerce, should the product category page be the pillar content?
The pillar content, should it be a product category page? The answer is likely yes. We will get a little bit more into this later on. So basically, the way to think about it is that core pillar content should have all of its subtopics, so all of its specific products linking to it. So that's a very natural way to facilitate that link. So that makes a lot of sense. And we'll get in a little bit more. We'll get into that a bit further as well. Okay, awesome. So thanks for chatting in some things you want to focus on. I love that. I love keeping it interactive. Like I said, I will talk, but it'll be less fun.
Yeah, so we just got one in from Miguel. It's when you say dial in a content topic, can you give an example of that using HubSpot? So for example, if marketing automation is too broad, how would you go about dialing that into an each year topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Miguel, I would say a couple pieces there. One, actually, if you search like kind of like the screenshot we have for marketing automation and see what other more specific elements are suggested, that could be your new topic cluster. So maybe it's marketing automation software with some other caveat. Honestly, I'm having a tough time thinking of one on the spot. But I would say go ahead and use Google and actually let that be the indicator for you. So that could be a potential new core topic. I will say eventually, once you have some SEO traction, hey, Bradley, coming in for the save. How to evaluate marketing automation software. Perfect. That's a great example. Yeah, and as you get a little bit more SEO traction, you can get a little bit crazier. But for now, yeah, I would say like how to evaluate marketing automation software is a great kind of longer tail version of marketing automation. Cool. So the second piece here is validating. You are welcome. So authority and monthly search traffic. So looking here, you'll see on the top on the right-hand side, this one actually is a wedding officiant topic cluster. So the core is wedding officiant. That doesn't really matter, but you'll see on the right-hand side the managing the subtopic. So this is a guide for choosing a wedding officiant. And you'll see that there's monthly searches. So search volume is actually calculated in this tool through SEMrush. And it's an average monthly search for a keyword, for the specific keyword within search engines. And I would say here it is important, or I would certainly recommend integrating with Google Search Console. All right. So some key terms that I just want to make sure we're all clear on. Pillar pages, topics, subtopics. I think we got it, but let's take a little bit of a deeper dive here. So in our center, we have the pillar content. This is your pillar page. This page is very bookmarkable. It's a page that's fairly robust, that has a lot of information that folks need. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like later. And then these are your subtopics. So these are the even more longer tail keyword iterations on what your core topic is. And then you've hyperlinked all of these subtopics into your core pillar content. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that's, I think as Megan asked earlier around, is internal linking important? The answer is definitely yes. And that's why these links are important in topic clusters. So the pillar page itself, the pillar page should cover all aspects of the topic on one single page. So it's a main pillar, if you will, of your content strategy, of your SEO. And like I said, the best way to think about this really is thinking about it in terms of something that's bookmarkable. So there's two common types of pillar pages I think we could review together. One is the 10x content. And a way to think about this is it's basically 10 times better than what could have been. So it might be that this one says 21 customer acquisition strategies to win new customers. Okay, so maybe you had a blog post that was 3 customer acquisition strategies, right? But then we realized that this has a lot of traction and folks need more here. Let's 10x it. Let's make it 10 times better and let's make it pillar-worthy content. The other piece here is a resource pillar page. So that's on the right-hand side there. So this is primarily actually hyperlinks into other subtopics. And again, it's a very bookmarkable page. If I am interested in content marketing or potentially a student that's writing a paper, this would be like, oh, such a godsend to have this information. So something that's a resource-oriented page. All right, have we had any questions come in?
Yeah, so we have one from Adrian. It says, where is the pillar page linked to on the site? From the main website navigation and then linking to the blog post. So a couple different questions there.
Yeah, that's a great question or questions. So I would say it depends on your own information architecture. So your sitemap, basically what are your primary pages, the main navigation items, and then what are your secondary dropdown? And maybe you have tertiary and more and then more from there. I would say the biggest thing to keep in mind is that typically a pillar page is likely going to be more like a main navigation page because it might be something like, I think the e-commerce question earlier was like maybe a product category, right? It's overarching, and then you would dial into that with more specifics. So I think that it's a little bit of a, it depends, but I would say generally more likely to be a main navigation pillar page because those are pages you really do want folks to get to.
So another one coming in, can the homepage be the pillar page?
I'd say probably not. I think maybe if you have like more of like a splash page, like a very small brochure website, then I think that could be like an inevitability. But I would generally say we would recommend it be a bit more bookmarkable, right? A homepage tends to be more calls to action, inviting people in deeper into the website, a little bit more of a high level website experience as opposed to something that's really super deep and rich. Homepages aren't quite as long as the pillar page might be.
You are welcome.
Awesome. Any other questions?
So there's a long one, it looks like. So we created an online course to serve as a pillar page. It introduces a course at the bottom, links to some of our blogs that are subtopics. It's a shorter web page though. Can this serve as a pillar page, or would it be better off with a long form blog content as a pillar page?
That's a great question. So I think it depends, actually. I would say that it could, if it has enough content that there's reasons why folks would go back to it. It kind of sounds like in your case, you would be better served with a long-form blog content that's like the courses that you have and the information that's available. And then the subtopic would be the actual courses, the actual like downloads or whatever their experience is. So I think if you don't have anything else, you could make do, but I wouldn't create a strategy around that being a pillar page. The pillar page would very likely be a longer form post.
Here's another interesting one. Can content be outside links to related articles versus our own blog?
Yes, it can. Definitely not pillar content, but you can have supporting content from, like, let's say if you have a YouTube channel and you have a YouTube video or something like that, you can. That's a great question.
And then, let's see. Another question about location. How does the pillar page show up in the standard nav that we have, i.e. about us, solutions, industries, blogs, contacts? Yeah, so it really depends. So how does the pillar page show up in your navigation? Well, if you're going after, if let's say you have like 2 to 3 different solutions that you offer, then I would have each one of those be its own pillar page. So solutions wouldn't be a pillar. You would have like the 3 pillars of, let's say you provide A and B, C solution. If you don't have a ton of supporting content just yet, you could make solutions the pillar and then have your 3 types of solutions be subtopics. But my preference would be to have each of your actual, because people typically aren't just Googling solutions, right? They're Googling X solution for Y need. So I think I would try to be a little bit more specific if you can. And Susanna just mentioned maybe an FAQ page built around a main topic, which links to related blog posts.
blog topics, pages, subtopics, exactly right. So you could have that bookmarkable FAQ page, and then you could have that linking out to your blogs and other supporting content.
So here's an interesting one based around the funnel location. So should you create pillar pages focused on bottom of the funnel, or is it focusing on the top or middle topics better? So different pages based on who you're targeting.
I think that might actually be the next slide. So let's click into it. If not, I will answer it. Let's say. Not yet. We will get to that. But the Reader's Digest version on that is basically you can create pillar content for any stage of the journey. So you can have top of the funnel. Let's not forget, the funnel is on its way up, the flywheel is on its way in. But yes, for awareness, consideration, and decision, you could have pillars for each of that because you really do want to respect where the user is in his or her journey. And you're also providing different content, right? If I'm just at awareness and just thinking, like, yeah, I maybe would buy a paddleboard, or I guess consideration would be, I might buy one. I could consider it. I'm not necessarily ready to talk to an instructor or talk to a salesperson. I might want an e-guide around why paddleboarding will make me trim and athletic, right? So you want to make sure you have relevant content offers. So I would say definitely making them for different parts of the funnel would be important. So it sounds like there's actually a lot of questions around creating this. So this is a well-timed slide. If I do say so myself.
Almost planned that way.
Right? So you're going to choose your core topic. You're going to identify the topic cluster. So that basically means creating or aggregating the content you do have for your supporting subtopics. You're going to link the relevant sources. These are your subtopics to your pillar page. I know I've said that like 3 times, but I just want to be so explicitly clear on that as an important piece. And then you're going to be creating a conversion path to guide people to your pillar page. So that's where like it comes in. Maybe you use HubSpot's pop-up forms if they're on a relevant page or an associated page to guide them over to the pillar page, because that's ultimately where we want folks to realize, holy smokes, these people are an authority in this industry. Then they're spending more time on your website, they're more engaged, it's positive ranking signal all around. So when you're actually developing them, a couple of recommendations I'd like to share. Offer various forms of media per section for the reader to engage with. So be thinking about, could we incorporate, I think FAQs somebody just mentioned. What about a video? Should we have different types of assets? So it's really important to be thinking about, like, how can we attract multiple different types of learners, if you will, to this page? Also, making sure you have relevant content offers that will nurture your personas through the buyer's journey. We just talked a little bit about that one. And then the last piece here is really to make sure that you evolve and you develop your subtopic. This is a longer term play, and I mentioned it to, I think, the question around like, well, could I potentially use my homepage? You could, but longer term, the goal as you become more of an authority is to actually have your subtopics, if they deserve it, if they merit it, become their own topic cluster and their own pillar page eventually.
Yeah. So a question just came in. Should we periodically change the pillar pages depending on how the page performs, or is this something that stays?
So typically the pillar page, actually is the question, would you swap it out for a different pillar page, or are you thinking about editing the content on the page? Swapping it out, okay. No, you wouldn't typically swap it out. I would say if the pillar page, if the topic cluster really isn't performing well, then I think you could potentially work shifting with like new content. If you have some success, then you could potentially make some tweaks to it. But generally, we wouldn't recommend changing the pillar page unless you, like, there's pretty extenuating circumstances. But typically what you would do is you would actually use the page that you currently have and do kind of up level that page itself. So, changing the content on it, keeping it fresh, keeping it evergreen. Okay, so in terms of, it actually looks like we got a good question then.
Yeah. So if you're getting good traffic on a couple of evergreen blogs on a longer tailed keyword, should you create pillar pages with that keyword or focus the pillar page on a more general keyword?
That's a great question, Mike. So I think it depends on whether or not those longer tail keywords have decent search volume. It sounds like they do based on the fact they're getting good traffic. But yeah, I would say if you are having some success with that, I would go ahead and make it a pillar page if you're comfortable with that being something that you know that when people search for that, they're potentially looking for the solution or the product that you provide. If, however, you have like a wildly successful evergreen blog that maybe isn't necessarily associated with your ideal persona, or really is just kind of sometimes we get lucky with a blog post here and there, I wouldn't necessarily create an entire pillar strategy around it.
Couple more questions here. How many pillar pages are too many?
That's a great question. I would say your pillar pages should be properly supported. So I would say you need about, we recommend around 4 to 8 subtopics for every topic cluster. So I'd be thinking about it from that realm. Like if you could properly support, let's say you have 6 topic clusters, each of which has 6 subtopics, then great, build another one. If you find that you're trying to do too many things and there's gaps in your content, then I would dial it back. Thank you, Mike. So that's helpful. The keyword is for your ideal customer. Exactly. We're always thinking about the ideal customer, our ideal persona there.
Yeah, and then looks like there's one more. So should pillar pages have more than one payoff, an offer on it?
More than one payoff and offer. So Eric, just to clarify, the question is, in addition to the SEO benefit, is there a reason, should you have multiple offers on the pillar page? Just want to make sure I'm hearing that correctly. And while you're typing back, ebook or other offer to the user. Yeah, you can definitely have a downloadable piece of material on there for sure. I would say if it's going to be on a pillar page, really make it one, match where the user is in their journey, right? So if it's a very high level awareness pillar page, then I wouldn't have the offer be something like, get your free consultation, right? That's not going to be, it's going to be a disjointed experience. But yeah, I would say if you have a relevant ebook, if I'm on my consideration paddleboard experience and you have an ebook that identifies like the 3 main types of paddleboards, I don't know if there are 3, but maybe there are, that would be something that would align with the user for sure. Oh wait, so measuring your topic analytics. I got a little carried away there. So that last piece, of course, is like, are these effective? And a couple people have chatted in that they haven't had historic success with topic clusters. I hope that we've talked about some concepts that are maybe a little bit different so that you can up-level your own topic cluster experience. I would also say a lot of you folks likely have a dedicated customer success or you're on a team customer success model. And I would say lean into that resource because that's my role and that's also Alex's role. So there are a lot of like very specific questions that we kind of addressed, actually I think a lot of them, but we'll address more with our remaining time. Definitely talk to someone and kind of dial in on your strategy. That's certainly what we're here for, and honestly that's one of the most fun parts of our jobs, so don't be afraid to ask. In terms of actually reporting, let's talk about that. What are some things we should be thinking about with reporting? The first is, what is the goal of the topic cluster? And so this actually goes to something I was trying to multitask, but I didn't get totally there. We're talking about top of the funnel, middle, bottom. If you have an awareness style pillar page, we're not going to judge the metric of that of how many customers did it give us, right? Because like, hold the phone, these are people that maybe we have a longer sales cycle, maybe they're still being nurtured. It's a bit preemptive to say, well, if they didn't close, it wasn't worth it. That's not necessarily true, right? So what is the goal of the topic cluster? Maybe it's just awareness, and that's okay. What are your averages? So in HubSpot, something to keep in mind, and I'm sure most of you are pretty comfortable with this, but you can set custom reporting timeframes. So what I like to do to judge the efficacy of a topic cluster is I look at basically pre and post cluster, looking at my SEO traffic. So what happened 6 months before? What happened from the cluster over the last 6 months? And I will say SEO, while I so wish it were a magic wand experience, Rome was not built in a day. And so it's definitely something where it does take a little bit of time. And so I would say, like, I wouldn't judge a month after launching a topic cluster. It's too soon to know if it's going to be successful. So give it a little bit of time there. The traffic and topic cluster analytics. So in HubSpot, if you go up to your navigation, click over to reporting and into analytics, you'll see you have traffic analytics, and that will give you organic search, so your SEO traffic. And then you also actually have the topic cluster analytics, which is a bit more self-explanatory. For both of those, you're going to be able to see sessions. So the folks that were on the page, you're able to see their time on the page. You're able to see how many of them gave you their contact information. And then of those, how many became customers. So that's really powerful data to leverage. I will also say that HubSpot uses a first touch attribution model for these reports by default. So it's how the person very first came to your website. And so it's really nice to know, looking at a topic cluster, if you have 10,000 sessions on a topic cluster, that means that their first entry was on your topic cluster. That's pretty successful. All right, so now we get to the fun part. We have about 5 minutes left here. If there's any questions that I wasn't able to get to, Alex, do you mind just kind of surfacing any of those?
Yeah.
And then also chatting in any questions that did come up. I think we did a pretty okay job, but I do want to make sure we get to everybody.
Yeah. Going through, I think we got most of the ones. There was a couple repetitive questions, so we answered them, so yeah.
Okay, we got to them.
Yep. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Megan. Okay, Megan, I'm glad you said that. And Heather, we will share the recording for sure. Let's see. I did see there was a few Q&A. Do we get these slides? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so a few items that came in. Somebody said, we've secured and earned media opportunities which have links to our homepage. Does that improve the SEO of our blogs, even if there isn't a backlink to a specific blog? Yes. The short answer is that all of your SEO is intertwined, so one page doing well is a good indicator. And then I would also say to the past educational group, that was the question around personas, department versus individual. You said, we sell instructional design services. I wondered about creating personas for procurement or curriculum development instead of individual people. First, decisions are often made in committee and not by one person. I would think most about that committee. I would always be thinking about who's making these decisions. And so if there's a procurement committee, I don't know a lot about your specific industry, I would definitely focus on that. And then that's a great way to be thinking about it. Honestly, when in doubt, always tie it back to the end user and the person that's going to be your customer. And that does mean, and you guys so astutely said this, talking to sales and talking to your support. Susanna mentioned, would love to see successful pillar pages. I can send along some examples for sure. I'll make a note of that. What other questions are coming in?
Big one we got a couple times is, how do we start to define topic clusters in HubSpot?
Yeah, Eric, that's the $1 million question. It starts with your content audit. So taking a look at the content that you already have is a really important piece there. Look at the content, figure out where do we have gaps, and then that's how you're going to understand where we have gaps and then what we actually want to be going after. So that was that piece there of like talking to your customers and getting like 5 to 7 things you want to be known for.
So knowing Rome wasn't built for the day, we have a question that's coming in here. After what period of time is enough to know if your pillar and cluster content is ranking higher and driving more traffic, etc., or if changes need to be made?
Good question. I would say I would give it for sure a solid 2 months, 3 months probably, and that would be enough time to start to understand. And I would say during that time, it's a ever-evolving process. So I would continue to try to score inbound links to those pages. I would make sure you've tightened up the linking from those subtopics to the pillar. So it's not totally a set it and forget it. It can be, but why don't we lean in a little better, hedge our bets, and see if we can continue to drive that traffic. And then, yeah, after a few months, if we don't see movement, we'll call it a wash. Any other question?
There's one coming in here. I've seen it a couple times. Ideal number of pillar pages.
The ideal number of pillar pages is how many pages you can properly support with content. So if you have 4 to 6 subtopics for each pillar page, then keep building out pillar pages. But if you find that you're really scraping together content, you're better off having a couple, like 2 extremely effective topic clusters rather than having 4 or 6 that really aren't well supported.
Okay. So I think I missed this one earlier. It says, using answer the public, a lot of forms of questions and statements aren't things that you'd ever write in a blog post because of grammar or their shorthand. How do you write these in search terms?
Mike, great question. So that brings us to semantic search. And so the reality is that I mean, you do want to think about your brand recognition, and you don't want to be writing colloquially if you're in certain industries. But that said, I would be a little bit brave and actually write some of these at least embedded in the blog post. So a way to get through that is to say, like, sometimes we hear X, right? That's a way where you're not having an author write something that's very casual, but you're saying, or, you know, you can do a Q&A section in a blog post. So I would actually encourage you to go ahead and include some of them, even if they don't necessarily sound like the language you would typically use, because the reality is that we're working with end consumer, and we're basically trying to make sure that we're using semantic search optimization. And people do often, they just hold up their phone and they ask their question. So I would say be a little brave on that front, even though it's kind of scary. Any other final questions? Otherwise, I do have a summary slide I would like to share with you. Okay, so Thomas's question, when you have closed keywords, how do you choose which ones deserve their own blog post and which ones should be treated separately? What do you mean by closed keywords? I'm curious about that. And thank you for the comments. The next training is TBD. Oh my gosh, Megan, I'm glad you asked that. Okay, CTA, if you had some fun, or even if you didn't, I can take it. When you close out the Zoom, you should be receiving a survey. And the biggest thing is there's a drop down that says, what does it say? It says, where did you attend this HubSpot user group? At the very bottom, there's a virtual hug. That's us, we're virtual. Everybody's at home or in their office or wherever they are. So I would say, please give feedback. We're trying to decide if this is a good use of your time, and candidly also a good use of our time. So please share feedback. What else you'd like to learn about? Would love to hear a little bit more around your experience. Also, Mike, you could be one of my favorite HubSpotters. Appreciate that. And I don't know if I'm speaking inbound. I don't think that's totally been fleshed out yet, but there are a lot of really incredible speakers. So would love to see you at inbound. Would love to see you. And then, is this tied to semantic search? Yes, definitely. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate that. If there's anything outstanding, I am going to comb through the chat. I will send one-off emails if we missed anything, because I'm compulsive and I don't want to leave you guys hanging. We'd love to see any of you at inbound. Sounds like we've got a little bit of a group at inbound. That would be awesome. Hope this was fun, or at least informative, one or the other. I know I had fun.
I had fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll send a follow-up. Hey, appreciate your feedback. We'd love to have you fill out the form as well. Take care.